In the ancient and mystical realm of Eldoria, there existed three diverse and distinct groups. These groups were the typical townsfolk, the mysterious witchers, and the majestic dragons. Each faction had its own unique customs, cultures, and ways of life, coexisting in a delicate balance within this sprawling world. Auric was a young witcher, an emblem of bravery, courage, and resilience. Unlike his fellow witchers who were trained to hunt and slay dragons, Auric had a different perspective. He viewed these majestic beasts not as monstrous threats but as friends, creatures to be understood and revered, not hunted and slain. This compassionate attitude marked him as an outlier amongst his people, but it never deterred him from his chosen path. Auric was not the only one with unconventional attitudes, however. The narrative of this tale truly begins to unfold when King Eldric, a man with an insatiable hunger for land, power, and dominion, makes a pivotal decision. He viewed the witchers and dragons with their formidable strength as detrimental adversaries rather than potential allies. This led him to declare them as enemies, which sparked off a massive conflict that would shake the of Eldoria. Eldoria was a vast land, rich in resources and magic. As the human population began to expand, they started encroaching into territories that were inhabited by the witchers and dragons. These were realms filled with ancient magic and uncharted wilderness, places where the witchers lived in secluded peace and dragons rested, far from human civilization. King Eldric, with his ambition and greed, saw these territories as potential additions to his kingdom. The witchers and dragons who resided there were seen as a threat, not just because they were powerful, but also because they occupied lands that he desired. This clash of interests fueled the animosity between the king and these groups, pushing them to the brink of war. Witchers were an ancient order, known for their magic and martial prowess. In the past, they had been guardians of protectors of peace and upholders of justice. They used their skills to safeguard the human communities from dangerous beasts and supernatural threats. However, this relationship between the people and witchers was about to change dramatically. Dragons, on the other hand, were creatures of legend. They possessed potent magic and were considered deities by some. They had never shown any interest in the conflicts and politics of humans. Yet, they now found themselves being hunted, not for their alleged monstrous nature, but for the magic they possessed. With the king's decision, the world Eldoria was thrown into chaos. Witchers, who had once been the protectors of the people, found themselves being pursued by the very people they had sworn to protect. Dragons, who had always remained indifferent to human quarrels, were now under attack for their inherent magical abilities. And so, the stage was set for a confrontation that would define the future of Eldoria. The once peaceful realm was now riddled with tension, betrayal, and war. The witchers and dragons found themselves in a struggle for survival, forced to defend their homes and their existence against the greed of a power-hungry king. At the heart of it all was Auric, the compassionate witcher who wanted nothing more than peace between all beings of Eldoria. The odds stacked against him, Auric refused to lose hope. He believed in a better world, a world where dragons, witchers, and humans could coexist peacefully. This belief fueled his determination, pushing him to stand against the tide of war and fight for the harmony he envisioned. But the journey ahead was fraught with uncertainties and challenges. Would Auric be able to uphold his ideals in the face of adversity? Could he change the fate of Eldoria and prevent the impending destruction? Only time would tell. So amidst this complex tapestry of ambition, conflict, and hope, the story of Eldoria continues. A world once marked by peace and coexistence was now teetering on the brink of war. Witchers, who had once sworn to protect the people, were now being hunted by them. Dragons, who had never cared about human squabbles, were now being attacked for the magic they possessed. Auric, a village boy known for his bravery and kind spirit, encountered an unexpected sight in the heart of the forest. A creature of legends, a being of unimaginable power and majesty, Seraphina, a dragon queen, lay wounded and defenseless. Her scales shimmered under the dappled sunlight, creating a breathtaking image of the raw force of nature humbled and brought down by an unseen adversary. The sight was an oxymoron of beauty and desolation, a spectacle that left Auric in awe and dread. Instead of fleeing in terror at the sight of the fallen queen, or taking advantage of her weakened state to harm her, Auric felt a surge of compassion. He was a boy of the village, yet he was unlike the others. Where they saw fear, he saw beauty. Where they saw a monster, he saw a creature in need. He stepped forth, his heart heavy with empathy and his mind buzzing with determination. His hands, normally used for mundane tasks, now became healers, tending to the Dragon Queen's wounds with gentle care, the forest around them humming with the raw force of their connection. The act of kindness, so rare in a world at odds with itself, sparked a bond between them. The unlikely pair, a village boy and a dragon queen, found trust blooming in their hearts for each other. It was a trust born out of vulnerability and compassion, nurtured by understanding and common ground. Over time, this trust solidified, binding them in a formidable alliance. They found solace in each other, companionship in an unlikely place, and a shared resolve to change the world around them. Motivated newfound alliance, they decided to band together to stop the cruel king who had wreaked havoc on their lands. The tyrant had disrupted the harmony of their existence, causing fractures that ran deep within their societies. They shared a common goal: to restore peace, to rebuild what was lost, to mend what had been broken. The endeavor was no easy task. They had to convince their respective groups, Auric, the villagers who had only known dragons as monsters, and Seraphina, her kin who saw humans as weaklings fit only to be their prey. This was a considerable challenge, as the long-standing mistrust between their groups cast long shadows over their intentions. The task was monumental, the odds stacked against them, yet they were unwavering in their resolve. The tension was palpable, the uncertainty a heavy cloud over their heads, but they persevered. Through many trials and tribulations, through countless hours of negotiations and heartfelt pleas, they managed to turn the tide. Slowly, but steadily, they began to see a change. The seeds of trust they had sown began to sprout, bridging the chasm of distrust that had divided their groups for centuries. They had to convince their own groups to join forces, a feat that seemed impossible at the outset. The task was grueling, full of obstacles that threatened to break their resolve. Yet, they persevered, their shared vision of peace driving them forth. It was hard, undoubtedly, because no one trusted each other. But they had embarked on this journey together, and they vowed to see it through, no matter the odds. The united Witchers and Dragons faced King Eldric's army at a place called Broken Peaks. It was a setting that personified the drama and tension of what was about to unfold. The scene was painted with the hues of impending doom and war, with dark clouds hovering over the jagged cliffs and battered stones of the land known as the Broken Peaks. The area, until then silent and serene, was suddenly filled with the clangor of swords, the guttural war cries of soldiers, and the eerie shrieks of dragons. It was a fierce fight, as fierce as the storm that brewed above the battlefield. Armors clashed and tumbled, turning the peaceful land into a war zone. The air was thick with tension and the bitter scent of fear. Auric, with his heart pounding in his chest, clenched his fists around his weapon. His eyes scanned the battlefield, finding the king in the midst of his army, garbed in his royal armor, embossed with rubies and emeralds. Every stroke of Auric's sword was calculated. Every step taken was towards the king. He moved through the melee, his mind focused on one thing only: to show King Eldric that peace was the path to choose, not war. The battle raged on, getting more intense as the passing of every moment. The ground was stained with the blood of both dragon and man, painting a gruesome picture of the war. Auric's path to the king was a treacherous one, filled with enemy soldiers and obstacles. He was a lone warrior fighting against the raging tide of war. Just when things seemed to reach their peak of fatal intensity, when hope was starting to fade from the hearts of the Witchers and the dragons, the air filled with an echoing roar. All eyes turned towards the horizon where the fate of the war was about to take a dramatic turn. Suddenly the sky was filled with the majestic sight of dragons, led by the valiant Seraphina. The dragons swooped down from the sky, their glistening in the faint light, their eyes ablaze with a fiery determination. They descended upon the battlefield, turning the tide of the fight. King Eldric's army, once confident in their strength, found themselves shrinking back, fear creeping into their hearts. The dragon's presence on the battlefield brought a new vigor to Auric and his friends. They fought on with renewed strength, their hope rekindled. The dragons, breathing fire and fury, started dominating the battlefield. Auric's path to the king was cleared, the enemy soldiers retreating in fear. The sight of their comrades falling to the dragons broke the spirits of King Eldric's men. Auric moved forward, his eyes locked on the king, showing him that peace was the way. With Seraphina and her dragons by their side, the united Witchers were able to turn the tables on King Eldric's army. The battlefield, once filled with the cries of dying men and dragons, soon echoed with the triumphant roars of the victorious. Auric and his friends, once on the brink of defeat, found themselves on the winning side. They were able to win the fight.